Illinois lawmakers are studying a plan aimed at keeping the Chicago Bears in Illinois. The 2026 legislative session kicked into high gear this week as budget committees got down to work and various groups began lining up to make their pitches for state funding. And University of Illinois System President Tim Killeen talks with us about what he hopes lawmakers will do this. And University of Illinois System President Tim Killeen talks with us about what he hopes lawmakers will do this session. From Capitol News, Illinois, it's Friday, February 27th. I'm Peter Hancock, and this is Capitol Cast. Hello, and welcome to another edition of Capitol Cast, a regular podcast of Capitol News, Illinois. I want to emphasize here that this is normally a news and politics podcast. It is not normally a sports podcast, regardless of how much some of us in the newsroom might like it to be at certain times of the year. Once in a while, however, the lines that normally separate the sports desk from politics get a little blurry. And that's certainly what happened this week when Illinois lawmakers began looking seriously at a proposal that, really, when it's all said and done, is aimed at helping the Chicago Bears build a new stadium and keeping them on the Illinois side of the Chicago metropolitan area. Here to help us unravel what that proposal is all about are CNI reporters Brendan Moore and Ben Selensky. Here to help us unravel what that proposal is all about are CNI reporters Brendan Moore and Ben Selensky. They've been following those developments. Guys, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Always a pleasure, Peter.
Okay, so whoever wants to take this one first, maybe Ben, I'll go with you. How did we get to this spot? Because this has been building for quite a while.
Yes, it has, and it really started, the Bears finalized the purchase of Arlington Park about 3 years ago, but it started closer to 5 years ago, back in 2021, when the Bears first expressed interest in buying at that time, a vacant racetrack away from Churchill Downs and moving a whole stadium there. So this has been talked about for a very long time, and then the Bears finally finalized the purchase and unveiled their plan to build a stadium and a big mixed-use development with residential housing, various stores, businesses, restaurants that would also be part of the whole stadium site. And they unveiled this plan. That was under team president Ted Phillips. And Ted Phillips was on his way out the door at that time. And so he left, and the current president came in, Kevin Warren. And that's when things got a little bit shaky because there was a new vision in the front office. And Kevin Warren, he was the former commissioner of the Big Ten. He really liked Chicago, and he wanted to see what could be done at Soldier Field, see if it was possible to keep the Bears in the city. So the team owned this property in Arlington Park, but then they unveiled in April of 2024, I believe, maybe it was April 2024, this plan to basically completely change Soldier Field. They were going to tear down essentially the existing structure of Soldier Field, build a new stadium next to it, preserving the historical part of Soldier Field. This would have been a massive cost to the state of Illinois, to the city of Chicago, not to mention all the lawsuits that would have been filed to block the project to be built on the lakefront. So that stalled out, despite it being a priority for the Bears for a while. And then other sites became interested. The old Michael Reese Hospital site in Chicago, a lot of folks were like, okay, maybe the Bears could build there. It's not too far from Soldier Field. Turns out that site is too small. Other suburbs start getting involved. Naperville throws out a plan that, hey, we have spots, in our community where we can hold the Bears. So the Bears, I think, have largely struggled to commit to a plot of land in some ways and to really find a way forward. That stalled a lot of things with lawmakers. And, if you talk to people, I think in Illinois, they will tell you that the Bears kind of came into Springfield with an assumption that they would get some help, and they may not have expected the pushback that they were going to get, that the state was not just going to roll over and give them whatever property tax breaks they wanted. So then that kind of, all these years of just discussion and looking at places and negotiations not progressing in the General Assembly, that led us to the end of 2025 when the Bears came out and said, Illinois lawmakers are telling us that we are not a priority for them in the 2026 spring session. We're going to look elsewhere. So they threw out Northwest Indiana as a place that they wanted to look. Obviously, folks in Indiana got very excited about that, and they very quickly rushed together a plan and put it together and passed it on. And now it's law in the state of Indiana that there's a plan that could ultimately attract the Bears to build a stadium in Hammond. Illinois lawmakers, I think, were kind of responsive to that threat, and that's kind of where we're at now in Springfield, watching Illinois lawmakers try and come up with a proposal to match what's going on in Indiana, essentially.
Yeah, and I think if you looked at the headlines in some Indiana newspapers, including the Indianapolis Star, you might have walked away with the impression that it was a done deal, that they were moving to Indiana. And then this week, Illinois legislators come out. They do have a proposal on the table. Brendan, tell us what this proposal is about.
Yeah, so this concept has been out there for more than 3 years now. The Bears have been seeking this, as Ben said, for a few years now. It's what's known as the Mega Projects Bill. So basically, this would apply to the Bears or any company really that invests a massive amount of money into a site for a big project. So the original bill said you had to have a minimum investment of up to 500 million. The latest bill says there are tiers where you can invest 250 million or 100 million, and there's some job requirements there. But the Bears have said they will commit at least $2 billion to a project in Arlington Heights. So this would apply to them. And basically, the idea is that it would freeze the property tax assessment on this site and allow the Bears, or again, any company, to negotiate a payment in lieu of taxes with the local taxing bodies for a period of up to 40 years. So basically, the Bears call this property tax certainty, but really it would likely result in a massive property tax break for the Bears, and basically allow for them, instead of having to deal with Illinois' kind of arcane property tax system, every year, every 3 years, where you don't really know necessarily what you're going to pay. They're going to get some predictability in what they would owe. Now, this concept languished for years, literally sat in the Rules Committee in the House for 3 years, and there was really no movement until this week when and they, as Ben said, have been negotiating behind the scenes after Indiana kind of got involved. And I should add that even though this would help the Bears, Governor Pritzker has been an advocate for this type of proposal for a few years now, again for other projects, because the idea would be, you bring in economic development, and it allows a structure where local property taxes are less of an impediment to bringing a lot of economic development. But let's just say there's an uphill climb to getting it done in Springfield. There are a lot of concerns from lawmakers about this, about the impact this could have on tax revenue in communities. And there's a structure here where, again, the negotiations would take place between, the developer and the local taxing bodies, and it would be a weighted vote, which means that the school districts would likely have outsized influence on that. And so, there's worry about, you have maybe one or two entities that are making big decisions for a community, that could have a long, decades long impact. But there have been adjustments since it was first introduced. Again, this isn't something simply as, the Bears, went to Indiana and now they have leverage. For years, as State Rep Cam Buckner, who's the lead sponsor of this bill, said, the Bears just kind of thought that they could kind of get what they wanted, that the Bears could just ask, and the legislature would write a blank check for them. I'm paraphrasing, but But the devil's in the details, and there were a lot of details that had to be worked out. For instance, in the new bill that was filed earlier this week, there was a provision in there basically preventing residential development from being included in a mega project, which essentially means that this would not apply to the larger mixed-use stadium district that the Bears will likely build if they build at Arlington Park. It's a massive 326-acre site. So this would apply to the stadium, maybe to like a team Hall of Fame, a few ancillary things, but it would not necessarily apply to the large site. Another thing, and again, this is more the broader piece of this is economic development. There would be some front end help on construction costs through a sales tax exemption on building materials for the first 10 years, perhaps up to 15 years, if it's extended. And that's somewhat similar to what Illinois offers through its enterprise zone program, which tries to spur economic development in economically depressed areas. So there's a lot in this bill. It passed out of committee on a partisan roll call, but you could tell based on the conversation that a lot of Democrats still have a lot of concerns with it, especially progressive Democrats and Chicago lawmakers, and we should also keep this in the context of the larger conversation. There's going to be a broader package if anything happens in Illinois. I don't think any Chicago legislators are going to vote for this until there are some guarantees that Chicago gets some concessions for the Bears leaving Soldier Field, since there still is a nearly $500 million in bonds to be paid off on the renovation from the early 2000s.
Well, and that kind of helps segue into my next question, was that for most of the time that we've been talking about here for the last 3 to 5 years, the question on the table was, will the Chicago Bears stay in the city of Chicago or move to the suburbs? And all during that time, it seems like Governor Pritzker was sort of hands off on the whole thing. I'm not going to get involved. The Bears are a private business. They make their own decisions. He didn't want to get involved in struggles between the city and the suburbs. Then all of a sudden, Indiana gets into the game. They start making an offer. How has the conversation changed just since Indiana put down its offer just last week? It seems like we're getting the conversation has changed, especially from the governor's office.
Yeah, I think the tone has certainly changed from the governor, and there have been some substantive changes. I mean, last year whether he meant to say it or not, he basically said that the Bears would have to pay off the debt that's owed on Soldier Field.
Which is considerable, by the way.
I mean, I believe it's a little under $500 million at this point. And to be clear, that is not the Bears' debt. That is the taxpayers' debt. The Bears paid for a portion of the renovation. They paid that off decades ago. This is on the taxpayers of mostly the city, because it's backed by the hotel tax, but it is backstopped. If that doesn't make enough revenues, city taxpayers, I believe there's a portion for the state too. But he backed off on that. He said, just to be clear, the Bears don't owe this, and that, and sounded a lot more open to this concept, this pilot concept. So I think there's been a shift in tone, certainly, and perhaps a walk back of, oh, they have to pay this debt. I think there's a general understanding that the Bears will have to pay something beyond, what it would be to break their lease in order to make Chicago legislators feel whole. But yeah, I mean, I think that, folks that have been involved in these negotiations say that, yeah, we've been talking throughout. Like, wasn't just Indiana, although Indiana played a big part in kind of jumpstarting the same. I think it was an accident that it really started after 3 years. It started getting serious after Kevin Warren released that letter implying that we're looking at Northwest Indiana, or explicitly saying we're looking at Northwest Indiana. But the Bears have also gotten more specific in what their asks are for infrastructure and for and they started getting down to the nitty gritty details of the pilot. So I think as we've seen on a few other occasions on other issues, The governor's office can be very hands off when things are going on, negotiations in the legislature between various issues themselves with transit. But when the governor's office gets directly involved, that can start to move things along. And I think we've seen over the past few weeks that the governor's office has been intimately involved in these conversations. Deputy Governor Andy Manar was in a 3-hour meeting with the Bears and other stakeholders on budget day, which, as we all know, is his busiest day of the year. And that I think that shows the importance this has to the governor, who, for all he says about, I'm not going to be shaken down by the Bears, I don't think he wants to be the governor that loses the Bears to Hammond, to Indiana.
Okay. So back to the legislature. The House and Senate this year are kind of operating on different schedules. They were both in this past week. They both adjourned on Thursday. The Senate will be back, but we're talking about a House bill here, and the House doesn't come back until March 18th, which coincidentally is the day after the primary election. To what extent is this teed up to be an election issue, especially in legislative races in the Chicago area, in the suburbs, and maybe even, in the governor's race?
I don't know how much it's going to be an issue in this primary race. I think a lot of voters are probably more waiting to just see what the resolution is before they judge. I mean, if the Bears head off to Indiana, I think that it's going to hurt the governor in his race. I don't think it'll change any results, but I think voters would kind of display some frustration in a statewide election like that. But in the short term, I think, there's a number of Chicago Democrats who face primary elections. And, if this week or something, they took a vote that really did not benefit the city of Chicago at all and voted to move the Bears to Indiana or something, I think it certainly would have been an issue in the primary. There were certain members of the committee, the House Revenue Committee, that voted on this yesterday, on Thursday, that were subbed out, which is kind of a routine thing we see happen in Springfield when there's a tough vote and, the bill needs to make it through committee. The speaker will put on somebody who supports that bill and take off someone who may not support the bill. Or if it's going to be a political liability for somebody to vote in favor of a bill or something, kind of protect that member, take them off the committee and put somebody else in there who can absorb that political heat. So, I think there was some thought, at least among Chicago lawmakers, that, should things really progress with the Bears, this could be an issue for us in a primary election when other Democrat candidates are involved.
Brendan, what do you think? Political fallout from this as early as the March 17th primary?
Yeah, I think Ben hit the nail on the head with Democratic primaries in the legislature. If you're a Chicago legislator, you can't really vote to let the Bears. I think that will let the Bears leave without having written concessions in writing from the Bears about what they're going to do. Cam Buckner, for instance, said that he's referenced what the Browns paid to the city of Cleveland to leave their lakefront stadium for a stadium in the suburbs is about $100 million. So that kind of gives you the ballpark of what they're thinking. And we're pretty far off from there. So yeah, I think that makes it tough. And I think that was what always made it tough. The legislative calendar in Illinois always made it tough for them to get something done in February, just because you had that primary. Legislators in general don't like to do a lot in election years. And usually in an election year, the first few months before the primary, you don't see a lot of activity down in Springfield. So, while Indiana, adjourns, today on Friday, Illinois has several more months to hammer something out. Now, in terms of Governor Pritzker, I mean, I think it could, like Ben said, I don't think he's going to lose an election because if he loses the Bears to Indiana. But yeah, I mean, I think it could be, it's a perception thing. It could be tied to, he's tried to brand himself as the chief chief marketing officer for the state and attracting business, and this could be a symbol of his maybe economic record of companies are leaving, and this one I think maybe hurts a little bit more than say like the Citadel uh, or Boeing or some of these other companies. I mean, these are the Chicago Bears are an iconic company and iconic brand in Illinois. But also again, he says he's not going to be shaken down, and I think there's a way to frame that too of I'm not going to give handouts to billionaires, and perhaps that plays well, say in a year or two when he might be running in a primary for president. So I think it could play a few ways, but again, at the end of the day, I don't think he wants to be the governor that loses the Bears to Indiana.
Okay, well, while the Chicago Bears grabbed a lot of the attention out of the State House this week, regular business about the legislature did go on. And the session really got into full swing following the governor's budget address the week before. Appropriations committees have started holding hearings, and this is the point where organizations that get state funding start lining up in front of budget committees to make their pitch to be included in the upcoming budget. This is kind of a tricky budget year. On the one hand, nobody knows what the Trump administration might do from one day to the next in terms of federal funding that is shared with the state of Illinois. On the other hand, the state doesn't have a whole lot of money of its own. A lot of organizations have been asking the state to be sort of a backstop against the possible loss of federal money. So that's kind of the context in which a lot of these hearings are taking place. Meanwhile, a lot of organizations, in advance of appearing before a budget committee, will hold a press conference to get their word out to the public, hoping to maybe turn up the pressure a little bit, especially if they already have a certain number of lawmakers backing them up in their hopes of getting state funding. Nicole Hittrick, who's one of our public affairs reporting program interns this year, wrote about one such group. This has to do with support services for prison inmates who are about to complete their sentences and return to their communities. Nicole, tell us about this organization and kind of what are they looking for, and what did you write about here?
Yeah, so the Supportive Reentry Network Collaborative is a group that provides things like employment assistance and some helping people sign up for public benefits programs to reduce the chance that people are going to go back to prison and fall back into criminal activity. And so State Senator Lakeisha Collins and State Representative Michael Crawford are, with this group, are asking for appropriations for next year to keep the program going.
Okay. Is this the kind of program that might be at risk of losing funding or having funding cut just because of the state's current fiscal situation?
I don't know about that part, but I think that they just wanted to definitely secure funding to keep it going.
Okay. Well, that is part of the normal process of the legislature that goes on every year, and it's starting to get underway, and we're going to hear a lot more about that as the session progresses. Finally, another organization that was in Springfield this week to meet with lawmakers was the University of Illinois. Higher education makes up a significant part of the state's overall budget each year, and the University of Illinois, with campuses in Urbana-Champaign, Chicago, and Springfield, make up a big part of the higher education budget. Tim Killeen is the president of the University of Illinois System, the umbrella organization that oversees all three campuses. He just announced in January that he'll be stepping down from that job after 12 years when his contract expires at the end of June 2027. I got a chance to speak with him outside the Capitol while some U of I students and faculty were holding a rally, and I started off asking him what U of I was focusing on this year in its lobbying campaign with the General Assembly.
Well, we're here in Force. We've got 150 students. We've got alumni. We've got all sorts of people. We just had a wonderful lunch. We're going to be advocating for the University of Illinois system and for state support and state alignment with the mission and so forth. And the students are going to be speaking from the heart about the importance of an affordable, world-class education that leads to good outcomes in society. And we want to make our case, but we want to do it with the people involved. So. Yeah, we do this every year. This is the 17th year, consecutive year of, we call it a day in Springfield. Yeah.
There have already been multiple committee hearings today and earlier this week from education groups, from all kinds of groups. The theme being everybody is either losing federal money or they're afraid they're going to lose federal money, and they're asking the state to be a backstop to that. Do you find the U of I system to be do you share that?
That's not a principal message for us. We're competing for federal grants with all of the agencies. We're very much involved in research. Our research volume is over $1 billion this last year. We have seen some cuts and some grants that have been terminated that are of concern, but we're not stressing that particularly right now. We're such a competitive, powerful, innovative force that I think the relationship with the federal government will stand the test of time. So it's not a primary function. We're talking about the importance and value of public higher education, affordability, access, completion, success, job creation, all of those things that young people need. And we're very proud that our enrollment has grown to over 100,000 students now, which is like a lot of growth.
Obviously, higher education funding has been a big issue the last several years, and especially last year, there was a bill on the table to overhaul the way higher ed is funded, to go to more of a formula-based system, similar to the EBF system for K through 12. U of I system was not in favor of that bill, but we understand negotiations have continued. Where do you stand on that?
Well, we agree and understand the impetus for providing more resources to public higher education. We think that's an important goal here, and with all universities involved in that. The details of the bill that's on the table, we looked at carefully. We did scenario planning. We've had lots of meetings. We've attended lots of meetings. We don't find it meets the purpose sufficiently, so we have not been supportive of that bill, but we're involved in conversations about finding a better path forward that would be provide sort of outcome orientation, so graduation of students should be more student-centered, should be realistic in terms of funding options and availability, and shouldn't disfavor the flagship university system. Our calculations have demonstrated that the bill as it stands would disfavor us, and it would lead to rises in tuition for Illinois families that we don't think is the right answer to the kind of problem sets that are being looked at. And so we're going to continue participating in this important conversation.
Meanwhile, there are the smaller regional universities, Western Illinois, Eastern Illinois, are really struggling at this point. The budget impasse a few years ago really hit them hard. They would like to see a larger share of the pie, or they'd like to see the pie grow considerably. Can you sympathize with their
yes, absolutely. We support all public universities. We think they play a really important role in the local communities and in the innovation agenda for the whole state. And it's painful to see some of those universities struggling with their budget. So we would be much in favor of enhanced resources. The specifics of this formula, it siphons resources from the flagship, and we educate 53% of the undergraduates, and we've grown our diverse population, 10.1% increase in black enrollment, undergraduate enrollment year over year. So we're pulling our weight. We don't want to see it become a zero-sum game where spoils are redistributed because of issues in certain institutions. We think all the boats in the harbor need to go up. And we're a big boat in the harbor, and it's an important boat for the institution. And you don't sort of negatively affect that when it's working successfully. But we absolutely sympathize and we understand, because we went through the budget impasse too, and obviously it was a big effect on our bottom line as well for those years. We came through it strongly because we reorganized internally, we made our processes more efficient, we grew enrollment, do a lot of shoe leather to recruit talent predominantly from the state for the undergraduates and our connections. So we're in our lane. We're going to swim in that lane as effectively as we at all can for the public of the state of Illinois. We've held our tuition down, and that's been difficult in these inflationary years. We froze tuition for 7 of the last 11 years, and the years where we did raise tuition, it was sub-inflationary. So there's been a good decade, my entire term really, of trying to really ensure that our product, which is a world-class product, is available broadly, and we have 25,000 more students than we had back then. So it's like we've added a town the size of Glen Ellen to our student body. So that's a successful track record. I don't want to see that become a sub-inflationary decade of declining resources, because it won't serve the families of Illinois well. But we do sympathize and hope and will work to make a better outcome for all of those boats in that harbor. It's a big harbor.
Well, finally, you've announced your impending retirement coming up. Looking back, what are you most proud of? What do you think?
I'm proud of a lot of things. The word retirement doesn't quite sit in my. I'm not going to slow down. I'm going to. But yes, it'll be 12 years, which is quite a term. I'm insanely proud of the momentum that the University of Illinois system has gained and grown. I mentioned enrollment, but also the research, our role in the high-tech economy, creation of companies, philanthropy. The outcomes in terms of graduation rates are great. We've enhanced the diversification of our student body and our faculty. So we're working on a lot of fronts, and I think the alignment with the state's needs are in really good shape. So I'm proud of the development of that kind of momentum for the state and its impact. It's $24.9 billion a year economic impact on the state. I'm proud of that. A lot of things I'm proud of. I'm particularly proud of how we managed through COVID. I think this was the best university anywhere to manage through a global crisis of that nature.
And as you hand the baton off,
yes.
What's the biggest challenge facing the person who takes your place?
I think preserving the momentum. I think we're living in a time of considerable turbulence and enhanced, scrutiny of public higher education writ large, and as an enterprise, the reduction or erosion of public trust and confidence in what we are. I don't think that is true for us. I think our public trust and confidence in the University of Illinois system is growing. But I think we need to be a role model for the whole enterprise of public education. We need to demonstrate impact. We need to demonstrate opportunity creation. We need to demonstrate excellence. And it needs to be done through authentic, generous partnerships. I think it's a very exciting job, frankly, and I'm a little bit in pre-grieving already about thinking about my next step. But for the right person, this is I think it's the most significant position in the academy. And to take the platform that exists today, which is a healthy, vibrant platform, into the future is wildly exciting. But with the kind of guiding principles of who we are, the land grant, we sometimes call it, principles of lifting society, opening doors, making sure that no communities are left behind. All of the above is public service at the scale of a state this size, $1 trillion economy, as big as the Netherlands, I like to say. So it's an exciting job, and I pray that we get the right kind of leader. I can promise you I am doing my very best in the position. And so transitions are important. Last thing to say maybe is I think it's important to me that there's a dignified, graceful transition, that it's not a last-minute, panic-stricken, rumor-driven kind of process, which you see in other universities, frankly. And I think the University of Illinois system can really role model how to do these kinds of transitions. And after 12 years, I think I'm up there in terms of longest-serving president, so I'm proud of that too.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
That was University of Illinois System President Tim Killeen, and you've been listening to Capital Cast. Capital Cast is a production of Capital News Illinois, a public affairs reporting project of the Illinois Press Foundation with funding from the Robert R. McCormick Foundation. I want to thank Brendan Moore, Ben Solinsky, and Nicole Hittrick for being here today. Until next time, on behalf of the entire Capital News Illinois team, this is Peter Hancock saying thank you for listening.